Welcome to the More Happiness, Less Suffering podcast. I'm Casey Howe, Senior Meditation and Dharma Teacher for Inside LA.
And I'm Dr. Monisha Vasa, psychiatrist. In our little podcasting studio in Orange County, California, we bring wisdom from the couch and the cushion to your real-life questions and struggles. So grab a cup of tea and join us. We're so glad you're here. So welcome back to the More Happiness, Less Suffering podcast. I'm glad to have you back with us. And today is a really exciting podcast because we actually have our inaugural guest on with us. And this guest is a dear friend of mine. Her name is Madhuri Parson. And she is a beautiful jewelry designer, as well as a meditation practitioner and yogi. And we are really, really excited to have Madhuri come on today and talk with us about her creative journey and her journey to meditation and yoga. So we are really looking forward to having you. Welcome, Madhuri.
Thank you so much, Monisha. I'm very excited to be here with you and Casey. Hi, Casey.
Hi there. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So a little bit about Madhuri, just by way of background. Madhuri started her jewelry brand in 2011 in New York City. She's bi-coastal between New York and Orange County, and really kind of brings together the best of East and West in her jewelry design. She has been featured in a variety of outlets, including New York Times, Vogue, Elle, the Rolls-Royce Table Book, just to name a few. And you can find her jewelry online at Moda Operandi as well as on her website. So Madhuri, why don't we just start by you telling us a little bit about your journey, how you came to jewelry. I know this is kind of a second career for you in some ways. So maybe just tell us a little bit about your story and how you even became a jewelry designer to begin with.
Oh, yes. Thank you. And thanks so much for the perfect introduction. I think you hit everything. And I just want to emphasize a spoiler alert, which is that, ladies and gentlemen out there, it's never too late to have a second, third, fourth, however many careers you'd like in one lifetime. Yeah. I think Monisha and Casey would agree. So as Monisha mentioned, this is my second career. I am a sixth-generation jewelry designer hailing all the way from India. Though I was born and raised in United States, my first career out of undergrad was in Silicon Valley. And I worked at software companies, pretty large companies at the time. And I was a corporate marketing manager. So that essentially entailed all their outreach to their clients and communities. And I also, on this job, learned something very pivotal that now I took with me as a jewelry designer and entrepreneur are my, I would say technology skill sets, even though in university I did not study, let's say, engineering, for example. Now, the pivot of my wanting to change career, so I was living in San Francisco, working in Silicon Valley for tech companies, literally doing everything I love, running, meditating, starting a book club, and getting paid a very nice salary, working with very, very smart people in Silicon Valley. While it was literally my, I'd say, dream life at the time, I was itching for some creativity. And actually, looking back, it was also spirituality in my work. So that right there, the creativity and the spirituality bit was missing in my life. And at that time, I was in my mid-20s, early 30s, when I was going through this identity crisis in my career. And those two that I mentioned, creativity and spirituality, were two that I was missing within my career. To fast forward this journey, it was a good 10 years in the making, by the way, before I switched my life and everything about it, I literally had to sit down with my thoughts, and that's when my meditation practice became sort of in the forefront, and my running at the time, to really consider a career switch. And I had some opportunities to start taking jewelry classes. I'm a big believer in, trying before actually moving on to something that's pretty big, which is a career switch in my case, and taking baby steps. And again, I have to correlate it to just sort of keeping a so-called balanced life in, again, my thoughts, which my meditation became powerful at the time. And I'm sure we'll get more into that. So then I got some commission pieces my mom and her friends gave to me. And these are Indian women who literally own a lot of jewelry, and they grew up with jewelry in India. So I made some pieces that they paid me. I didn't even put a price tag, so I didn't even know what it meant to create some business plan. And I started getting confidence that, okay, my creativity and spiritualism is coming out in my pieces that are commissioned, and I'm actually getting paid for it. So I would say that gave me the confidence to, at that point, look into furthering my studies in the jewelry sector. I literally moved from the West Coast, so California at the time, San Francisco, to New York City with one suitcase and a rollaway mat in my brother's studio. So that was my welcome to New York City, and then the rest was kind of history.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's quite a story. Yeah, and I'm always inspired. I totally agree with what you're saying about the fact that we can reinvent ourselves at any time in our lives, that there's really no age limit to when we can take on a new endeavor, career, hobby, whatever it may be. Would you say, looking back, that would you always have defined yourself as a creative person, even since childhood? Like, do you conceptualize creativity as something that you either have or don't have, and or is it something that sort of grew with you as time went on?
Yeah, that's actually a very, very good question. So it was there. Yes, I do feel that I had this creative outlet, I had the creativity within myself, but I did not have the outlet. So I take it back. What that means is I think sometimes when you're born into, creativity within, so whether it be in, spirituality, whether it actually be, surrounded by art, and also taking a liking for, literally beautiful objects, whether it's, it could be fashion, or it could be architecture, it could be a beautiful walk in nature, and looking at these objects as beauty. So I think in my mind and in my heart, it was always a line that I was creative within. But I didn't feel that I had an outlet. I was surrounded by, my core community, so friends and family who, went in other professions. They were not artists. They were not in the creative field. So at that time, my outlet was more on the business side, and a lot of my friends, to be honest, were going into working for tech companies at that time in the 2000s. So I feel that, within it was always there. But I think that also looking back, because like I mentioned earlier, and you did too, that I come from a legacy of jewelers from India. So when I was in my early teens, so 13, 14-year-old, I would spend my summer months, specifically those 2 years of my life, age 13 and 14. I remember being with my grandfather and grandma, and my parents would literally just have us my siblings and I stay in the summer months with them in Calcutta, India. And it was on my dad's side who were all jewelers. So my grandfather was a jeweler, and his shop was downstairs from their flat where they lived. So I would go with him and meet with his customers, work with his artisans who, neatly sat on the floor. It was no special big operation. They would open up these lavish, parcels of diamonds, really vivid and sparkly and colorful emeralds and rubies, you name it. They had all these beautiful gemstones in these packages. And to me, it looked like just Starburst candy. I was like, wow, what is this? It's so colorful and sparkly. And again, I had no idea what that meant because my father went in a different career when he came to the U.S. And it was, my legacy did not kind of start in the U.S. It started actually, it stopped in India. So for my carrying it over to the U.S. was something else that I did. But just to round out your question, sometimes we forget to look at, what is right there by our side. It's like taken for granted, right? So I think slowing down and that's what helped me actually with my yoga practice and meditation on running in San Francisco allowed me to do was kind of slow down and, see, is this something that I like to do? And then thinking through my legacy and what grabbed me at that time is, wow, this is so amazing. Not knowing what jewelry was, to be honest, why it was so special. And so, I think my outlets then became, carrying on the legacy. That was the biggest outlet that I had that I tapped into, and also, tapping into my creative self. I hope I answered that.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people look at their lives and maybe find that something's missing, kind of that feeling inside that something is missing, and want to make some type of shift. And obviously, you did. And what do you think is maybe a single attribute that allowed that unfoldment to happen? Maybe within your meditation practice, you touched on it briefly about maybe coming into some kind of stillness or spaciousness. But what do you really attribute to making that internal shift? And I also like the fact, maybe touch upon this, that it took a while. And I think a lot of us want to go very quickly and want to make a shift very fast and whatnot. But it sounded like you were really patient there. So yeah, just what do you think allowed for you to get the confidence to make that shift, and maybe a little bit more about that process of slowly moving in that direction?
Absolutely. So I'll try to break this in sort of stages in my life and correlate it to my meditation practice, because that was the core essence or tool, if I can say, that helped me become patient, as you mentioned. Because, it's so easy to say, oh, I'm bored at my job, and wow, being a jewelry designer and making a business out of it sounds really amazing. Okay, let me do it.
Yeah.
And some people do, and that's amazing. But for me, without mindful being sort of at the forefront nowadays, I think I was pretty mindful in making these critical steps in my journey. So, for example, I mentioned that when I was living in San Francisco, working for big software companies, there was a lot of pressure. Absolutely. I would spend, 60, 70 hours a week at the office, if not working from home. So I think a lot of people can understand that, pressure. And my outlet was my meditation practice and running. So between the two, what it gave me was, number one, an endorphin, a massive endorphin kick. So I think when we're active, right, we feel it's painful at the beginning, that run, you're sweating, you're exhausted. But then when you have finished that and you, let's say, take a shower and your mind is automatically feeling happy, in my case at least, and I think a lot of people. When I added that with my meditation, I started doing yoga, but my meditation became something pretty big for me. I started off with Surya Namaskar, which in Sanskrit means sun salutation. Mm-hmm. So that practice started with my father when I was in high school and lived with my parents at the time. So we would wake up literally by sunrise and wake up with the sun doing yoga. Mm. And it was just flowing poses. And half the time I was literally not aware of my body, my mind. I was just in motion, literally wake up and do it. When I got to San Francisco and I'm an adult living on my own, starting off my career in technology, I started getting into that practice. And I would start waking up in the morning before I go to the office by that sun salutation practice. Again, just flowing in the yoga postures. Mm-hmm. And it started resonating with me. And also adding to that, I was introduced to the monk Thich Nhat Hanh. Probably not pronouncing it.
He's wonderful. Yeah, totally amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
Peaceful mindfulness. Mm-hmm. And I was just flowing in this euphoric energy of literally not even thinking, just doing. And the fear that I had about the overwhelming of my career and the worry I had about transitioning to being an artist, jewelry designer, went away. I started looking into classes. I started telling my parents what I'm doing on the side while working. And with a lot of support, I got more confident, right? And then the shift of with very, mindful way and calculated to the point where I knew that I was going to live with my brother in New York and start a new life and journey, which I was very, very apprehensive, by the way. But I knew one thing, which is that I have to explore what's in my heart right now, which is this creative outlet. And it was to create this jewelry brand and the legacy I wanted to carry. So now I get to New York. It's around 2004. I was, by the way, only in San Francisco for 4 years, then moved to New York. And Casey, to round it out, basically my practice of meditation got more intense for me. Yeah. In 2006, I was inspired by my family. They had all done this, but I decided to take a 10-day silent meditation practice called Vipassana.
Mm-hmm. Like a Vipassana
right.
retreat. Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Yep. And I did that where it all started for me back in San Francisco Bay Area. I went to a course there. I felt the most comfortable doing that. Of course, they have courses all over the United States and obviously globally. Buddhist kind of practices 2,500 years ago. And as you and Monisha know, that it really is about feeling your mind and body sensations within the meditation practice. Mm-hmm. And it's a way to observe as meditation is, so self-observation and self-transformation. Mm-hmm. And the self-transformation is where this meditation, Vipassana, got me to be silent in my fear of living in New York, starting this new journey, no salary, no real job, at school, at Fashion Institute Technology, got into their jewelry program. And, being a student all over again, it's something I'm very uncomfortable doing because I wasn't sure. So if you see these two time frames in my life, when I was in San Francisco, I felt this euphoric, like, wow, I'm vibing in this beautiful space, and I'm feeling myself in this mindful practice of my, Surya Namaskar practice. But then the second step, which again, now looking at it, was the Vipassana practice that really made me get clear in my mind, be more, focused, and observing of my body sensations within what's happening in my thoughts. And I'm still, of course, practicing and trying to align my thoughts. I'm definitely, one who has moments of fear and panic and uncertainty, of course, in times like now. And so, the meditation practice is for times like now, and just even my creativity, testing me to no end to keep that patience as I did by the transition of my careers. Hope that helps.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. No, I think that's fantastic. And I think one of the things that stands out to me in what you said is about how yoga and meditation, at times brought you to, as you said, kind of these euphoric moments, but also in some ways gave you sort of the fortitude to sit with yourself through some of the more challenging emotions as well, the anxiety and fear that came about as part of your transition, and I think
Totally.
that's such an important aspect of meditation practice, is learning how to sit with ourselves through those uncomfortable stretches or those uncomfortable moments and see them through to the other side. And it sounds like that was a real stabilizing, force for you in this transition.
Yeah, like for example, if I can add to it, as you mentioned, it really helped with sitting with uncertainty and pain, to be honest. And the pain is that when one runs, as someone is an entrepreneur like myself, there will always be this level of self-doubt.
Yes.
And it's like, in our mind as an entrepreneur, we're in two minds, right? The one that, is all excited, pumped up that we're going to make a difference in lives. That's why we came up with some idea in the first place, product, service, or both. And we really want to do good. It's the ultimate of wanting to start something, right? At least that's how I feel. And when I wanted to contribute my artistry to the world, my customers and my, business partners, it's like I wanted to share some love and happiness in a medium that is considered beautiful. When, for example, someone wears my piece or admires, jewelry, let's say, they look at it sometimes as an artwork.
Yes.
And so I feel it's some way of a self-expression that, individuals, you and I, Casey, we can all take and say, hey, that ring, that bracelet, reminds me of that time when I was, fill in the blank, happy, or this was given to me from a loved one. And wow, the artist behind it created these pieces knowing that, she tapped into her, legacy, and that was in India, and, the richness of the craftsmanship or the textiles, or for example, being in the modern day world, living in a very, fast-paced environment, right? Sometimes looking at something that makes you feel happy changes your, paradigm shift of this fast-paced life you may be living or looking at, and worry that, gosh, can I actually be a part of that? Do I need to be a part of it? So it's interesting that, like, through my now Vipassana meditation, it's truly matured me and opening me to be still, to not literally fight sometimes the panic button of, oh my gosh, how am I going to reach my customers? Like, how am I going to keep this business going? Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And instead go, gosh, what are my core values of building the business? Who am I? And I think it's connecting the dots of, creativity, like being this artist that can create a design that perhaps resonates with somebody. Wow, that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like looking at artwork, let's say at a museum or being fascinated by your favorite artist and wondering, how did they do that? What, creativity or pain, let's say, or suffering did they tap into to get where they are?
Yeah.
You see, I know I'm opening up some other things, but
I mean, absolutely. And, being somebody who's been a long time admirer of your jewelry, I mean, I can definitely say that in all of your pieces, we can feel all of that, from your heritage to your own experience to your artistry to that connection between you and the person who's wearing your pieces. Yeah, it absolutely is a beautiful form of art. And, maybe what we'll have to do is have you, back to continue the conversation about some of all these sort of wonderful topics that have come up today, and give us a chance to learn more. But for now, maybe, what we'll do is, in a second, we'll have Casey wrap up our time together with a meditation. But Madhuri, I just wanted to say it was such a pleasure to have you on and to hear your story. And just for our listeners, where can they find your work and your jewelry to learn more?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Monisha and Casey, for
Thank you
allowing
so
me this
much.
time with you. And I would wholeheartedly love to come back on and, be with you again. So thank you. For your listeners and audience out there, hello. I would love to stay connected, and they can go on my social media, which I think, Monisha, you guys will post, right?
Yeah, we'll include them in our show notes for sure.
Correct. So Instagram, Facebook, which Monisha and Casey will share with you, as well as on my website. And again, will be shared. Those are the best three ways to stay in touch. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. And we will definitely share that in our show notes and on our own social media. Let's go ahead and wrap up with a meditation to wrap up our time together.
Yeah, and we spoke a little bit about, Vipassana practice or insight meditation. And, if we just take the moment as it is, this is practicing Vipassana. This is practicing the truth and coming into alignment and awareness with truth as it is. So wherever you are right now, of course, if you could join us with your eyes closed, feel free to do so. If you are in a vehicle or whatnot, just allowing these words to kind of wash over you. And the moment itself is so incredibly rich when we pay attention to it. So maybe just taking a few moments and see what the moment is offering to you. And in Vipassana meditation, we're becoming great listeners, but we listen with the entirety of our being, not just with our ears, but with all of our senses. And even our intuition, paying attention to what is seen and what is unseen. Thoughts sensations, feeling tones. And then ultimately, what is true is only true in the here and now. This is truth, happening moment by moment. And since each moment is unique to the individual perceiving it, recognizing your truth here in this moment. And as we all know, there's a part of our beingness that is connected. And there's also a shared truth. And in alignment with this, especially now more than ever, really connecting with all beings. And then just setting the intention that all beings find their truth, come into alignment with it, and may all of our truths benefit all beings, benefit each other. May all beings without exception, may they all be happy and free from suffering. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.